Hey, welcome back, Lingaroo Troop. Today we're going to be diving into some principles or ideas that I think need to govern our decisions when we're thinking about therapy choices for autism. Don't go away. Hey guys, welcome back. As I said, I am so excited to have you with me today. I'm excited about this channel, this Lingaroo Troop that we're building. It's growing every day, and I think as much as I'm excited that we're reaching more and more parents, I'm just excited to get to connect with you guys as well. I've had so many of you reach out via the comment sections down below, or reach out to me via email or on our Facebook page, and I've been so encouraged to connect with you, to know that you're connecting with the material and the content that I've been putting out, and it's just exciting. This is like a dream come true to me, to get to connect and to share all of this stuff with you guys. So along those lines, I've had a couple of parents in the last few weeks ask me about specific therapy modalities or therapy techniques for autism. And while today we're not going to address those individual therapy styles precisely or exactly, I thought it would be better. I kind of like to my therapy is driven by my theoretical basis, or my theory of what I believe about kids and what I believe about language development, right? And so that's what kind of drives me. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about some of these guiding principles for treatment in autism. And so let's dive in. I think the first one, and probably the most important to me, is just that there is such a wide variety of kiddos that we find who have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum, right? And as wide as, and that's why they call it a spectrum, right? Because they say if you've met one child on the spectrum, you've met one child on the spectrum, right? Every kiddo on the autism spectrum, every adult on the autism spectrum is unique. And has unique gifts and talents and abilities, and also unique difficulties or situations where they need extra supports. And so we have to think about that. In my idea, I think, why would we not think about that truth as we're looking at therapies for autism, right? This idea that one therapy would fit all of these kiddos is completely mind-blowing to me, that we would ever adopt that idea, right? There is not a one size fits all. There's a wide range of kiddos on this spectrum, and there are a wide range of therapy options for you to explore as a parent. And I think you need to be encouraged, and I think you need to be empowered as your child's advocate to look into all of the options, right? And not to just settle for one, or not to just be told this is the end all be all and this is what therapy has to look like for your child. Okay, so that's just the first governing principle, is that you have options, right? The second one is that whatever therapy style or modality you choose, it needs to be developmentally appropriate, right? Let's think about neurotypical kiddos, neurotypical children in that birth to 3 range, how they are learning and growing, and how your autistic child is exploring the world around him or her and learning and experiencing life. There's no difference, right? There's no difference in how we need to think about these kiddos developmentally. We should never put our child, our autistic child, we should never put them in a therapy setting that isn't developmentally appropriate for them, right? Birth to 3, 4, 5, these little ones, it needs to be play-based. It needs to be child-led. It needs to have a heavy focus on interactions, right, in a natural environment. It makes, again, zero sense to me why we would take these little kids and think that just because they are autistic or because they've been given this diagnosis, that all of a sudden they need to sit at this table and be drilled and work and do things that I wouldn't expect a neurotypical child of that age to be doing. Does this make sense? So we have to get away from these therapy styles that are just not developmentally appropriate, and we need to find some that are. One of you as a parent reached out and asked me about the modeling technique. Modeling technique is very similar to some of the first videos that I did. I did a couple of videos early on, over a year ago now. Language stimulation strategies 1 and language stimulation strategies 2, right? We talked about self-talk, talking about what you're doing as you're doing it, or parallel talk, watching your kid play and talking about what they're doing, and kind of helping them to overlap that language onto the activities that they're doing. We talked about all of these strategies in just the natural everyday environment, right? And I think that's super important. There's another therapy called floor time. It's natural, just spending time on the floor with your kiddo, engaging with them, playing with them. That would be developmentally appropriate, right? For our birth to 3, birth to 4, birth to 5, those early years, those are important things to consider. Another parent asked me about Milieu teaching style. And again, this is just kind of a natural, setting, in a natural setting, bringing up language and giving choices and providing natural consequences. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But these are all very naturalistic, developmentally appropriate, age-appropriate, play-based therapy modalities for our kiddos on the autism spectrum. Third, I just want to encourage you to allow the interactions to be child-led. Right? One of the first things I do when I have an autistic kiddo coming into my clinic, one of the first things I do is I have the parent fill out a survey of kind of just their preferences. What does your child enjoy? Right? And again, think about any of us. How do any of us learn best? We learn best when we're motivated. We learn best when we're engaged. Right? So if we're taking this child and I'm introducing this therapy activity or this target goal that I think you have to learn, and I'm going to do it on my agenda, my schedule, with my toy choice, chances are good that the child's not going to engage. Chances are good that learning could even be decreased, right? Because the child isn't motivated. They don't care. And sometimes I don't know why they would, right? When I watch some of these activities that are done, it's like, well, but the child is into cars and Legos right now, right? And you have them over here doing this puzzle with a bunny rabbit, right? Or whatever it is. It's just, it's so far from what would be motivating to the child, and the child isn't leading the experience. Right? And let's contrast that. What if we allowed the child to just do and go and play and explore, and kind of like the motto of Lingaroo, right? Where language comes to life. We're bringing language into what the child's interested in. We're bringing language into the activity that the child has chosen. And you hide and watch as you do more and more of that, how much more engaged your child is, and how much more you're setting the stage for true learning and true language acquisition to occur. Okay, so principle number 4, and we talked about this a little bit a minute ago, but we just want to create natural communication in a natural communication environment. Okay, so again, like I said, where language comes to life, there are natural cause and effect interactions that you and I do every day, right? When I go to Chick-fil-A and I want to order, I tell them my order and they put it on the tray, right? After I pay, of course. But there's this reciprocity, this back and forth, and these are the types of things that we want to teach our children as we're teaching them language acquisition, right? And not just spoken language, right? Maybe it's a point. Maybe it's a gesture. Maybe it's an actual sign. Like they've learned the sign for more. They know that as they want to, if they want more crackers, they can do that and they get them, right? And I want to talk a little bit about this in terms of things to avoid, right? We have to avoid withholding toys, withholding food items, kind of this manipulation, right, of the treats or the rewards, whatever, these therapists are calling it. This idea that they have to work for these reinforcers or whatever it might be, there is some, obviously, again, there is some of that takes place naturally in life, right? That's part of the reason we cry when we want to get someone's attention, or as a baby, when they cry, or a toddler, when they call out mama and they want you to turn, right? There is some of that cause and effect, and that natural communication exchange. But there's a very thin line before we as therapists, or we as parents, kind of cross the line a little bit, right? And we want to be sure that we're encouraging communication, not just my goal or my specific target objective, right? If you're trying to teach your child to request juice, and your child pulls on you or pulls at the cup, he's requesting juice, right? He may not say juice yet, but that is a communication. A major meltdown is communication, right? These behaviors that you see, they are communicating something, and it's our job as detectives, as parents, to figure out, what is that communication trying to tell us, right? And it's valid. It's a valid communication attempt, even though it's not ours. The other day I saw a parent, and he was trying to give the child a lollipop, right? And he wanted the child to say please, right? And she says "ee," and kind of like wiggled around with excitement, and he said say please. And I'm like, she said it 3 times. It didn't sound like what we were expecting to say. Her "e" or her excitement, right? She was saying, give me the lollipop, right? I want it. And so we've got to be really quick to reinforce and encourage that communication, and not withhold toys or not withhold desired objects until we hear what we want to hear, right? We want to have our eyes open to the communication of the child and reinforce that. We can still model, right? We can still model the request, but we've got to be able to reinforce it the second we start to see it, and not withhold these toys and not withhold desired items, just kind of more out of manipulation or for our therapy objectives or for what we're trying to get our child to do. Okay, so again, there is a natural process of kids learning language, right? Kids learn that they can request things, they can regulate their environment, they can protest, they can say no, they can tell their brother to stop it, right? And once they have this language, whether it's spoken language or a device or signs or gestures, that once they have a way to communicate, they can see all of these connections. But as we're teaching it, we have to start by showing them the connections in a naturalistic environment. Number 5, we need to have respect for each individual child and for his or her autonomy. Okay, we need to, again, think about how we would want to be treated in a learning situation. Right? You and I have all gone into whether it's a class or a group setting or a seminar or something, and think about, again, what types of those activities, what about those activities was engaging to us? They drew us in. They created an environment where we wanted to be there. We wanted to learn, right? We weren't criticized. We weren't mocked. We weren't manipulated. We weren't coerced, right? So any of those things, think about how we would want to be treated, how we learn best, and try to create environments for our kiddos where they can learn best as well, and where they as individuals are respected, and where they are given the most options to help and the most supports that we can to support the areas that are difficult, but then also just giving them a place to thrive and learn. Okay, number 6, we want to presume competence and presume comprehension. I talked about this a little bit in a video a couple weeks ago. We want to presume the fact that our child understands what we're saying. A lot of times I've seen parents kind of talking about the kid and, or talking about the child, and he's sitting right there, and how awful would that be for us, right? I don't know if you've been there, or if you've ever had this happen to you, where you overhear someone talking about you, or you overhear somebody kind of saying something negative about you or about a situation, and it's so hurtful, right? And we need to be sure that, or we need to remind ourselves and think about the fact that our child very, very well is understanding everything we're saying, right? And we want to ensure that they are supported and encouraged at every turn, right? And we never want to assume or presume that they don't understand anyway. So what difference does it make, right? That's horrible. We've got to get away from doing that. And we've got to create environments and therapy settings and activities in our homes that presume competence and presume comprehension of our kiddos. Okay, and finally, guys, we want to find therapies that focus on communication and not just spoken communication, right? I am less concerned about spoken language than I am overall communication, right? I would much rather give the child a device that can help model language and help the child communicate than to withhold it out of just speaking, continuing to work on spoken language. Yes, we're going to continue to work on spoken language, right? But we've got to give these kids access to communication, not just spoken language. Right? And I'm thinking about too, like the quality of language. And we've talked about this before too. Not just I want, right? There's so much more to language, right? How about leave me alone? How about, no, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Those are phrases, those are tools that we can put in these kids. My neurotypical kids can say those things, right? To each other or to me sometimes if they're frustrated. So why wouldn't we, or why shouldn't we start as early as possible to equip these kiddos to give them rich descriptive language, rich language to engage and protest and to communicate their hearts and to communicate their minds to us in a way that is very typical of any child. Right? So we want to think about that. Focus on overall communication and not just spoken language. All right, so guys, I hope this is helpful. Just as you're thinking about, as you're looking out and thinking about these types of therapies. Again, I mentioned floor time. I mentioned some other naturalistic approaches to language acquisition. Certainly speech therapy, as long as it's a speech therapist that kind of follows these guidelines and these principles, is awesome. Occupational therapy, as long, again, as it's an occupational therapist that follows these guiding principles, then great. The Greenspan's floor time is another great option for young kiddos. I'm also a huge fan of a program called CERTS, SCERTS. There's a professor, Barry Pizant. He's written a book actually called Uniquely Human. I'll have a link to that down below as well. The CERTS model is a very language-rich model of speech therapy or language therapy that follows a lot of these principles and guidelines. So there are a lot of amazing therapies out there. Again, the idea is just to find one that respects your child and respects this process, and giving them all of these options, rather than just saying this is the way we're going to do things, and this is how therapy is going to have to look because I say this is how it's going to have to look, right? So if you guys have further questions, please post them down below. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, and then go back and check out the videos I did about language stimulation techniques. I think those might be helpful as well. And we'll see you next time here at Lingaroo, where language comes to life.